The stars of the Devok system shimmered with a deceptive calm, a serenity that belied the brewing storm on its edge. In orbit around the barren moon of Tal-Rosthfur, the vast silhouettes of human warships floated in stillness, silent, dark, and cold. There were no engine flares, no active weapon locks, and no communications beacons. To the untrained eye, the fleet appeared dormant, perhaps even abandoned. But for those who knew how humans waged war, this silence was far more dangerous than noise. For months, the Galactic Dominion had been expanding aggressively, assimilating border systems and bullying minor species into compliance. The Dominion's leaders, flush with arrogance and recent victories, saw humanity's slow, deliberate movements not as a threat, but as an act of desperation. "They're trying to intimidate us," laughed Marshal Krytal during a Dominion War Council. "Let them line up their ships like dominoes. We'll knock them down just as easily." Yet not all were so quick to mock. High Admiral Vexen of the Varelian Empire stood apart from his peers. Though not an ally of Earth, he had long respected the strange and elusive Terrans. He had spent years compiling data on their history, wars, fought with cunning rather than numbers, victories won with tools no one else had considered weapons. Vexen had watched them fight with stones when outgunned, poison when outmanned, and silence when underestimated. And now, they were silent again. Vexen observed from his command seat aboard the VIE Watcher of Stars, stationed far enough to remain neutral, yet close enough to see the pattern unfolding. Thousands of human vessels, each with no visible power signature, held formation across a 12-sector grid. Their symmetry was unnerving, their stillness calculated. No broadcasts, no movement, just presence. He sent warnings to both the Varelian Council and the Dominion. "This is not weakness," he cautioned. "This is preparation. The Terrans are doing what they've always done, watching, learning, and waiting." The Dominion dismissed his words with typical hubris. They labeled the human presence as a bluff, an act of posturing by a species known for its unpredictability. The Dominion scouts probed the human perimeter, receiving no response. They called it cowardice. They sent small skirmish fleets to test their nerves. All returned with nothing to report. But Vexen knew better. The humans were baiting them, luring their enemies into a false sense of dominance. He recognized the ancient Terran tactic from Earth's own wartime archives. Let the enemy think they're in control, until it's too late. Back in the Devok system, Admiral Adrian Corr of the Human Vanguard Fleet monitored the unfolding reactions. Every sensor ping, every communication echo, every tactical maneuver from the Dominion was recorded and analyzed in real time by quantum learning cores embedded across the fleet. The humans weren't idle. They were compiling a battle before it even began. No one fired a shot. No war had technically started. But in those quiet days above Talros 4, the most decisive advantage of the entire war was already secured. Not through aggression, but through restraint. Because the galaxy still didn't understand one fundamental truth. When the human fleet is silent, it means they've already planned how to end you. The Dominion, drunk on its recent conquests and bloated with self-importance, took humanity's silence as weakness. With the Human Armada quietly holding position above Talros 4, many in the Dominion elite saw it as an opportunity to make an example of Earth's so-called military. The Dominion's supreme warlord, Rakir Vun, announced the deployment of a cleansing fleet, a strike force of 600 ships designed to decimate the Terran front line and shatter morale in one swift assault. To the galaxy, it was a statement. To the humans, it was confirmation. The enemy had taken the bait. As the cleansing fleet departed from Karvoth Prime, celebrations erupted across Dominion-controlled space. News feeds broadcast footage of confident Dominion captains raising their weapons in salute, promising to break the Terran shield and scatter their ashes across the void. The alien public devoured it eagerly, convinced of swift and glorious victory. The Dominion's propaganda machine spun the human fleet as outdated, primitive, and cowardly. But on the bridge of the HSS Vindicator, lead ship of the Human Vanguard, Admiral Adrian Corr watched the approach of the cleansing fleet with calm calculation. He didn't move his ships, no orders to charge weapons, no interception fleets. Just cold observation. His officers, all veterans of shadow conflicts and asymmetric warfare, understood the Admiral's strategy without question. The Terran war doctrine didn't favor first strikes. It favored complete response, a single, overwhelming retaliation timed for psychological devastation. As the Dominion cleansing fleet crossed into contested space, still no resistance came. They probed with long-range scans and found no power readings, no shields raised, and no signal. Jamming. The Dominion commanders chuckled over open comms, calling the humans ghosts and cowards. Then they broadcast a message across all channels. By order of Supreme Warlord Voon, Earth's false fleet will now be erased. Watch and remember who rules. The stars. Missiles launched. Particle beams lanced through the void. A dozen volleys screamed toward the motionless human line. Still, no reaction. On the command deck of the VIE Watcher of Stars, Admiral Vexen watched in horror. He had studied human behavior long enough to know something was deeply wrong. "They're not dead," he whispered. "They're ready." Then it happened. The instant the first missile crossed the invisible boundary of the Terran kill zone, the entire human fleet lit up. Ships that appeared cold and dormant surged with power. Shields blossomed like living energy. Autonomous defense drones burst from hidden launch bays, and before the Dominion's weapons could even land, every single one was intercepted, scrambled, or redirected. Then came the retaliation. Human vessels, pre-programmed for instant engagement, fired in perfect unison. Their weapons, fusion spears, graviton shears, and pulse-net cannons, tore through Dominion ships with terrifying precision. In just 14 seconds, the cleansing fleet ceased to exist. No escape pods. No survivors. The galaxy watched it unfold live. Silence had been mistaken for fear. Stillness had been mistaken for weakness. Now the Dominion knew the truth. Humanity wasn't hiding. They were setting the trap, and the rest of the galaxy was next. To realize, this wasn't a war the humans hoped to win. It was one they had already calculated. The destruction of the Dominion's cleansing fleet reverberated through the galaxy like a thunderclap. Billions watched replays in disbelief. 600 warships, reduced to slag and silence in mere seconds. But what shook them most wasn't just the scale of the defeat. It was the way it happened. To the untrained eye, the human retaliation appeared like sorcery. One moment, their ships sat inert in the void, lifeless and cold. The next, they sprang to life with terrifying precision. But this was no magic. It was design. Every human vessel had been operating under stealth lockdown, disguising energy signatures and dampening hull activity to appear inactive. Behind that facade was a fully operational war machine, guided by war AI, layered predictive targeting systems, and decentralized command networks. At the heart of it all was Admiral Adrian Corr, commanding the human response from the HSS Vindicator. Known as the Still Blade among human commanders, Corr believed that the true art of war wasn't in aggression, it was in timing. His strategy had relied on the Dominion firing first, granting humanity the moral and political justification for total retaliation. The moment that first missile crossed into the Terran engagement zone, Corr's plan activated in full. The human warships didn't need orders in that moment. They had already been given them days ago. Each vessel's combat protocols were governed by quantum-linked battle systems, allowing fleet-wide synchronization that appeared instantaneous. The result? 3,000 Terran ships moved as one. First, the drone waves, swarms of autonomous interceptors, invisible until ignition, burst from concealed bays like hornets. They intercepted every incoming missile, hacking some mid-flight, detonating, others with pinpoint EM pulses. Not a single Dominion shot landed. Then came the Ripple Shield deployment, a human innovation that combined energy shields with phased refraction, making it nearly impossible to hit the same spot twice. Dominion gunners found their targeting data scrambled by adaptive distortion fields. Their weapons simply missed, not because of error, but because physics itself was being bent around them. Finally, the counterstrike. Human warships unleashed, graviton shears that tore apart enemy hulls at the molecular level. Beam lances carved through cruisers like scalpels. Fusion spears, cohesive plasma lances traveling at near relativistic speed, punched through command ships and detonated their cores. There were no messy explosions, just quiet disintegration ship after ship, like giants turning to dust. The entire cleansing fleet ceased transmitting within 14 seconds. Sensor logs recorded the battle from a dozen angles. But one fact was consistent. Humanity's fleet had suffered zero damage. Not a single ship had lost shielding, not a single pilot had perished. The Dominion's greatest show of power had evaporated like vapor under a blowtorch. Across the galaxy, military strategists scrambled to analyze what they'd seen. They discovered that human weapons didn't just fire faster, they fired smarter. Each shot was calculated for maximum psychological impact. Key Dominion vessels, flagships, command centers, elite strike cruisers, had been targeted first, ensuring leadership loss and chaos. This wasn't a battle. It was a message, and that message was simple. Humanity does not strike first. But when it strikes, it does so with the full, merciless weight of its genius. The galaxy realized, with creeping dread, that the rules of warfare had changed, and humans had written the new rulebook. The annihilation of the Dominion's cleansing fleet sent shockwaves far beyond the immediate battlefield. Across star systems and communication networks, the astonishing footage of the human fleet's rapid and complete victory spread like wildfire, igniting panic, disbelief, and awe among countless species. The galaxy, long accustomed to the Dominion's unchallenged dominance, suddenly found itself facing an unknown, unpredictable force with a level of precision and power it had never witnessed. In the capitals of the major galactic powers, council chambers filled with alien dignitaries buzzed with urgent debate. The Varelian Empire, already uneasy about the humans, grew increasingly alarmed. Admiral Vexen, who had warned of humanity's quiet preparation, now found himself vindicated but isolated. His voice rose in desperate appeals to the Empire's High Council, warning that humanity's silent buildup was no accident and that their tactical capabilities were unparalleled. Many dismissed him as paranoid, clinging instead to their belief that no species could rise so quickly and so devastatingly. Yet, the undeniable truth gnawed at even the most skeptical leaders. The Dominion's swift defeat exposed glaring vulnerabilities in galactic defense strategies. Military analysts scrambled to decode the human fleet's tactics, studying the rapid deployment of drones, the ripple shield technology, and the seemingly instantaneous coordination between thousands of ships. Alien warships and commanders, suddenly, felt exposed and fragile, and old alliances began to waver as fear of humanity's capabilities grew. At the heart of this turmoil was the realization that the humans had mastered something beyond mere firepower: psychological warfare. The speed and decisiveness of their victory weren't just about technology. They were about sending a message that shook the very foundation of galactic power. The speed of the collapse communicated a brutal warning to any who might consider underestimating humanity again. Among the civilian populations, the narrative shifted rapidly. Alien media outlets, which once portrayed humans as primitive and disorganized, scrambled to revise their stories. Public opinion swung wildly, from disbelief and fear to grudging respect, and in some quarters, outright admiration. Some fringe factions, long skeptical of the Dominion's authority, began to see humanity as a potential ally against tyrannical rule. Meanwhile, the political repercussions rippled through the Dominion itself. Supreme Warlord Rakir Voon faced mounting pressure as questions about the failed cleansing fleet turned into accusations of incompetence. Several high-ranking officers were court-martialed or quietly removed from command. The unity of the Dominions leadership began to fracture as fear turned into blame and distrust. Despite the chaos, the humans did not press their advantage immediately. Their silence after the battle left many wondering about their true intentions. Was this an opening salvo of a larger war, or was it a warning meant to force diplomacy on their terms? Admiral Vexen continued to advocate for caution. He urged his people and others in the galaxy to recognize that humanity's unprecedented display was a pivot point. The coming weeks would determine whether the galaxy embraced a new order shaped by humans or plunged into all-out conflict. The echoes of the battle didn't just stir fear, they awakened a deep uncertainty. The age-old galactic hierarchy was shaking. Empires questioned their strategies, leaders doubted their own power, and for the first time in generations, the galaxy confronted the possibility that humanity wasn't just another species to be conquered. They were a force to be reckoned with. In this turbulent moment, one truth became clear. The war was far from over, but the balance of power had already begun to shift, and no one could say where it would settle next. In the aftermath of the stunning defeat inflicted on the Dominion's cleansing fleet, the galaxy hung in a tense silence, uncertain how the humans would respond next. Would they press the advantage with overwhelming force? Demand unconditional surrender? Or retreat into the shadows once more? All eyes were on Admiral Adrian Corr and the Human Armada, waiting for a sign. What came instead was a message unlike any other, a simple, clear transmission broadcast across every known communication channel in the galaxy. It was brief, direct, and carried the unmistakable weight of authority. We asked for peace, you answered with fire. Now we answer in kind. There were no threats, no ultimatums, no declarations of conquest, just a sober statement of fact. The words echoed throughout star systems, sparking waves of shock and reflection. Humanity had made their stance clear. They had desired peace, but would not tolerate aggression. And when provoked, they responded with overwhelming, calculated force. The message sent a ripple of fear and respect through the galactic community. Many species, particularly those under Dominion rule or fearful of future conflicts, began reassessing their allegiances. Fleets that once marched under Dominion banners now quietly began repositioning, some even defecting to avoid being caught. On the wrong side of the coming storm, diplomatic channels flooded with requests to open talks with humanity. Emissaries from various factions sought to understand the humans' intentions and terms. But the Human Armada remained silent beyond that initial transmission. Theirs was a posture of restrained power, ready to act decisively, but unwilling to escalate without cause. Meanwhile, within the Dominion, Supreme Warlord Rakir Voon faced growing dissent. His failures in underestimating humanity and losing the cleansing fleet had fractured his authority. Some Dominion leaders called for renewed war, hoping to rally and crush the humans before they could consolidate their position. Others advocated for negotiation, fearing that prolonged conflict would only invite more losses. The human message complicated these internal debates. It forced everyone to confront a simple truth. Humanity was not interested in conquest or subjugation. They were interested in survival, respect, and peace. But those values came with a caveat. Aggression against them would be met with swift and total retaliation. Across the galaxy, civilians and soldiers alike grappled with a new perception of humans. No longer the chaotic, unpredictable underdogs. Mocked in past conflicts, humans were now seen as disciplined, strategic, and terrifyingly efficient warriors who valued family, loyalty, and calculated response. This shift in perception led to a profound political realignment. Some systems, eager to avoid destruction, moved to establish secret communications with human commanders, seeking alliances or at least neutrality. Others fortified their defenses, preparing for the possibility that humanity's patience might wear thin. Amid this upheaval, Admiral Corr remained a figure of calm resolve. To him, the battle had never been about domination or revenge. It was about teaching the galaxy that peace demanded respect, and respect demanded strength. His silence after the message was deliberate, a demonstration of restraint and confidence in humanity's preparedness for whatever might come next. Humanity's clear but measured declaration unsettled empires and star systems alike. It marked a turning point where fear of human power mingled with a grudging respect for their discipline and honor. The galaxy was forced to acknowledge that the humans had rewritten the rules of engagement, and now everyone had to choose how to respond. The future hung in delicate balance. Diplomacy or war? submission or resistance. In the face of humanity's quiet but absolute resolve, the galaxy's next moves would determine whether peace could be forged or if the flames of conflict would engulf the stars. With the galaxy still, reeling from humanity's decisive strike and the powerful message broadcast across the stars, the stage was set for a defining moment in galactic history. Would this be the dawn of a new era, one forged by respect, caution, and mutual understanding? Or the spark that ignited endless war? The answer hung in a delicate balance, shaped by choices made in shadowed council rooms and distant starships. The Dominion, weakened but not broken, struggled to maintain control over its vast territories. Supreme Warlord Rakirvoon's grip slipped as dissent grew among his ranks. Some warlords demanded ruthless retaliation, eager to crush the human threat before it could grow, while others urged caution, fearing further devastating losses. The political cracks widened as former Dominion allies reconsidered their loyalties, uncertain whether to continue backing a faltering empire or hedge their bets with the rising power of humanity. Meanwhile, other galactic powers watched closely, their own militaries scrambling to adapt. The Varelian Empire began clandestine talks with human diplomats, seeking to understand their true aims and avoid catastrophe. Smaller systems and independent factions, many oppressed by Dominion rule, started reaching out, hoping to find favor or protection under humanity's expanding shadow. On the Human Armada's side, Admiral Adrian Corr and his command staff continued their vigilance. Despite the overwhelming power displayed, they knew the galaxy was far from secure. Humanity's true strength lay not just in their technological superiority or tactical genius, but in their unity, resilience, and unwavering resolve. The human commanders prepared for all eventualities, peace negotiations, proxy skirmishes, or even all-out war. Humanity's message had been clear. Peace was preferred, but any aggression would be met with swift and total retaliation. This delicate stance earned humanity wary respect but also suspicion. Some feared the humans' patience would wear thin, while others hoped their strength would usher in stability in a chaotic galaxy. The ripple effects reached beyond politics and war. Trade routes shifted as systems realigned, commerce fluctuated with uncertainty, and refugees fled unstable regions. Cultural perceptions of humanity transformed, from primitive earthlings to formidable strategists and warriors whose legacy was only beginning to unfold. Amid these tensions, secret negotiations blossomed. Humanity, careful to maintain their advantage, engaged select factions in dialogue, building tentative bridges of trust. These talks hinted at the possibility of a new galactic order, one where diplomacy was backed by undeniable strength and respect was earned, not demanded. But lurking beneath the surface was a harsh truth. Not all embraced this new reality. Extremist factions, emboldened by losses and fear, plotted rebellion and sabotage. Rogue commanders sought to provoke conflict, hoping to reignite full-scale war and resist the shift in power. As these forces churned, humanity remained vigilant, ready to respond decisively, but measured. Admiral Corr understood that the true battle extended beyond starship engagements. It was a war for the galaxy's future, a test of whether strength could coexist with diplomacy. The final moments of this chapter saw the galaxy standing at a crossroads. Would it choose the hard but hopeful path toward peace, guided by the tempered power of humanity? Or would the fires of fear and mistrust consume reason, plunging the stars into endless conflict? In this uncertain dawn, one truth was undeniable. Humanity had irrevocably changed the balance of power. They were no longer a silent fleet lurking in the shadows. They were a force that demanded recognition and respect. And as the galaxy held its breath, the choices ahead would determine not just the fate of empires, but the destiny of all sentient life among the stars.